Hey there, We Can't Wrestle podcast listeners. If you haven't noticed, we have switched our server to Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Highly recommended by me and everybody else here at the We Can't Wrestle podcast.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Nate Maxon, your host, here with you, and before we start the show, I want to mention some friends of mine, and they are in a couple of Facebook groups that are pretty badass, especially if you're a collector of professional wrestling memorabilia, Hasbro figures, WWE Elite figures, etc., etc. If you like wrestling collectibles, I recommend a couple of groups to you. I want to recommend the first one, which is The Era, mainly a Hasbro group, and Hasbro's my favorite series of WWE figures. I have a complete set and love them, but I want to mention Archie Mitchell, Pat Mansonetti, Dave Duncan, and all the other guys in The Era. You need to join that group on Facebook. The Era, fantastic giveaways, raffles, just a community of guys that love Hasbros, and they are my Hasbros bros. And also want to mention The Asylum. The Asylum, another great wrestling figure group on the interwebs. Some great guys there too. David Gold, Nick Francis, John Majewski. John Majewski does a free game of poker. You play poker with John for free, and if you win, he'll give you some shit. It's great. It's an absolutely fantastic group. Both of these two groups, I recommend checking them out. The Era, The Asylum, right there on Facebook. It's absolutely free to join. And just to get in there, if you like to collect wrestling action figures, wrestling memorabilia, let those guys know you want to be a part of the communities. They're great communities. They're great people. And I just wanted to mention them to start off the beginning of the show this week. So let's get into the meat of the show this week. We are creating dream rosters. Aaron's going to join me here shortly. And we are creating dream rosters. It's any time period, anything you want to, at any time period in professional wrestling. We're going to build a roster. 20 singles wrestlers, 5 tag teams. And that's going to be great. What belts are we going to have at the beginning of our promotion? Who's going to be our first champions? So let's get that started. But again, I want to say, The Asylum, The Era, 2 fantastic communities on Facebook. Not just about the figures, not just about the raffles, although those are fantastic. I enjoy them. I've gotten lots of merchandise from these great guys. Hell, I have a AFA graded Undertaker red card Hasbro because of The Asylum. That's what I'm saying. You can get in there if you like to collect figures, and you can win some awesome stuff. So that being said, let's get into this. Let's talk some dream wrestling rosters here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Let's get this party started. Hello, wrestling fans. It is time to get the latest edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast underway. Nate and Aaron are here with you, and this week's edition is going to be a draft of a dream roster, and it's going to be amazing. We each got to pick 20 singles wrestlers to start our roster, and then 5 tag teams, meaning 30 total superstars. And I'm also going to let you know which champs that I have picked, what titles I'm going to have, and which champions are going to be my inaugural champions in this organization.
And to preface this would be these people at the prime of their career.
Yes, because it's from any generation, any era of wrestling, and they would be in their prime at this time. So I think it's going to be a great exercise in pro wrestling fantasy booking. But before then, we're going to delve into that. What is it, 1992?
Yes.
The 1992 PWI 500. Aaron has had me select numbers, which I do not remember, but he's going to let us know what I selected. And we're going
You selected 20, 90, 164, and 325. Remember that.
All right.
All right, so number 20 is Ron Simmons.
Badass motherfucker.
Yes, at this time, Ron Simmons was 6'2". He weighed 260 pounds. He had been wrestling for 6 years, and in 1991, he was ranked 29.
So
Go ahead, sorry.
When they would have brought this out, would he have been WCW champion by then? I'm sure if it doesn't list it in the description, probably not.
No,
because that's what I was going to say. It would surprise me if he was 20 and he had won the WCW championship by that point.
Well, he might. I don't want to say he didn't win it, but his blurb is a Florida State football legend is now a top contender for the WCW title. Held the WCW title, tag team title with Butch Reed as Doom. His power repertoire includes an incredible power slam. But this was also put out in December, and you have to remember that, like, PWI would be, like, say December's magazine was, like, months in advance or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely. But Ron Simmons, a good pull there for number 20. Always,
yes.
I mean, if you can say what you want about Ron, and I don't hear a lot of people say bad things, that's not what I'm saying. But if you can say one thing about Simmons, he is one of the best hands in the history of wrestling. Like,
yes.
I've never seen a Ron Simmons match that I didn't, at least, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've never seen a Ron Simmons match where it's like, that was terrible. That sucked ass. Even if his opponent sucked, it was still a decent match. So, I'm a Ron Simmons fan.
Me as well. So you also picked number 90. Mm-hmm. So let's find out who number 90 was. Number 90 is Super Invader.
That would be Hercules, right?
Yes. Well, maybe. Is it Hercules? Is it not Hercules?
I believe it was, because he was with Harley Race and Vader in WCW. And it's a mind-boggling thing to think, why the fuck did they put him under that mask and call him Super Invader?
I know, I was being facetious.
Just like I don't understand why in 96 WCW put the Powers of Pain under the mask. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't you just have the fucking Powers of Pain? I don't know. It's stupid. Stupid WCW.
So, if this was Hercules,
from Bangkok,
and I'm not saying it was, his blurb is, Harley Race claims this man comes from Bangkok. Wrestles with the fertility and confidence of a veteran. However, he shows martial arts in favor of brutality. He's now a WCW contender.
Stupid.
So that Super Invader, as we all know, is fucking Hercules.
Under a hood. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. So then we have 164. 164. Let's see who that is. 164 is Joe Savaldi.
from the IWCCW.
Yes, he was a mainstay.
Yes, he was. Do you remember seeing that show, like, late night on cable, like, when we were younger?
Yeah.
And they would always play, like, the same, I don't know, I think it was Tony Atlas or something. They would always play the same match, like, once every 2 weeks. Like, it was a really weird show because they had, like, footage from the early day, or whatever. Like, they had some footage that they had from when they were kind of a hot promotion. But by the time we were seeing it late at night on TV, it wasn't a hot promotion. And they would have, like, 2 shitty, like, their guy matches or whatever. Like a Joe Savoldi match and a fucking, I don't know, whatever. And then it would be, like, there would be, like, the same Tony Atlas and Doink or some shit. I don't even know, but they had like, the same match.
They'd be like, who's the greatest Intercontinental Champion? And they'd have that
the Honky Tonk
shitty
Man
promo between Honky Tonk Man and Rick Rude. It's fucking garbage.
And then you never saw the match. The match never actually happened.
That was bad.
But anyway, Joe Savoldi, the son of Angelo Savoldi.
Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
So now 325 is the next one that you picked. And it is Gary Albright.
Should have been a contender.
He was 6'3", 310 pounds. And this Montana native went on to become a star in Canada and Japan, competes in the Orient these days, sometimes travels to Mexico. A fine all-around athlete. So good for him.
Gary Albright was a good, like, strong-style wrestler.
Yeah.
Dead now. But I don't mean to be morbid. Maybe I do. But he never made it to, like, the he never made a splash. He never made a splash in the States. But I've seen some of his stuff from Japan, and he really was a good, like, strong style wrestler. I mean,
yeah. This is kind of fun.
Oh.
In 1992, guess who was at 342?
342 in 1992.
Not at his weight, obviously, but 342. Guess who it was? Or, yeah, was.
92.
Okay, you don't have to guess. It was cool to see this name on here, and I'm probably gonna post it on a couple of the, like, I'm not gonna plug other people's podcasts or web pages or whatever, but I'm gonna post this.
Other than Breaking Kayfabe, we can totally plug that one.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's a friend of that, and he's a friend of the Mothership.
Barry Horowitz?
Nope.
Oh.
Jerry Gray.
Jerry Gray. My man, Jerry Gray.
342, Jerry Gray. In 1992, he was 5'11", 238 pounds. He had been in the business for 12 years. The year before, he was at 325 on the PWI 500. A personable star. Is the current SWF champion in Florida. Started a career slowly, but now it is becoming a main event talent. Can brawl with even the most rugged opponent.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, folks.
And it looks like his picture is him working in Japan. I'm not sure who he's working with. I don't recognize that person. But Jerry Gray. That's pretty cool, man.
I'm going to tell our listeners something. Whether or not he was ever in the main events, as far as a main event person, Jerry Gray definitely is a main eventer.
Yes, he is.
And a main event storyteller. And I just put it up on our Facebook group today, again, for the millionth time. And Aaron just gave me the opportunity to plug it. If you have the opportunity, Jerry is battling stage 4 cancer, and we have the link on our Facebook group to give to his GoFundMe page. And I promise you this, that is a good cause to try to give Jerry. He spent all his expenses, all his money on his expenses, his medical expenses. And the money's running out, so any help we can give this man is greatly appreciated.
And that really wasn't it's like a setup. I just noticed that he was on there.
That's fantastic.
So,
lucky numbers. My lucky number this week is 342, right?
Yes.
There we go.
So you want to pick two numbers?
Go to the guy at the gas station and be like, give me the Jerry Gray on the lottery ticket. Three more numbers?
If you want.
All right.
2 or 3.
I'm going to go... I'll do 2 more.
Okay.
And I'm interested in this. So I'm going to go out here and say number 1. Who was number 1 in the 1992?
Number 1 in 1992?
PWI 500.
Well, I will get there.
Who's number 1 and why is it Macho Man Randy Savage? Who had a great 1992, by the way.
It is not Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho Man Randy Savage was number 2.
Damn it.
In 1992, number 1 was Sting. He's a former 2-time WCW champion and remains a top contender. More popular than ever, master of the Stinger Splash / Scorpion Leg Lock finishing combo. 3rd title, sure to bet. Like they're going to say he's going to be a 3rd-time champion.
Well, I don't agree with Bill Apter as Bill Apter, Matt Brock, and everybody else that wrote for the PWI. I think that should be flip-flopped. And Randy Savage should have been number 1 in 1992. But anyway, the next number I will go with is, let's go mid-range. Let's go the very middle of the pack, number 250.
Number 250 is...
The Swedish Chef?
No. Tom Brandi.
Tom Brandi.
Salvatore Sincere. He wasn't Salvatore Sincere yet.
Tom Brandi's been on PWI 500s for like 30 years under 40 different names.
But he's one of the top stars on the East Coast independent scene, boasts a powerful drop kick and remarkable scientific skills, has wrestled in the AWA, CWA, and IWCCW.
Was Tom Brandi also Johnny Gunn?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember. Like, I was like, was that Tom Brandi? Like, he had so many iterations of his character and his I don't know. So many gimmicks, I guess. He really didn't have gimmicks. It was like this, other than Sal Sincere, he was
just a guy. He was a guy that should have been like, if you were gonna draw a generic looking wrestler, you know, it would be that guy.
To me, Tom Brandi's the same thing as Paul Roma to me. Because
Paul Roma was better.
Like, I don't know. Paul Roma's very passable to me. I know you like Roma more than I do, but Paul Roma's passable to me, but I don't hate him. And I kind of feel the same way about Tom Brandi. Like, he's passable, whatever. He's kind of a generic cut by numbers. The only time I really liked Paul Roma is when he was in Power and Glory. Other than that, I could, whatever. I didn't even, and I like Paul Orndorff, but I didn't really even like Pretty Wonderful that much. I know that just went on a tirade against a guy we didn't even mention to begin with, but that's kind of the air that I put Tom Brandi in is with me. He's right up there with Joey Maggs, Paul Roma, Jim Powers.
All right.
Okay.
Stuffing my face.
Well,
Sorry.
Well, that's okay, because we're going to take a quick little break. And who's doing their roster first?
I'll do mine first.
Okay. When we come back from our break, Aaron will pick his dream roster, 20 singles wrestlers, 5 tag teams, 30 wrestlers in total. And as he's starting this promotion, what titles is he going to have and who is going to be his inaugural champions? And then I will do the same. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. After these. Alright fans, as we take this little break, while we're taking this little break, I wanted to pop in here and remind you about our friend Barry Rose, and I want to remind you about the Championship Wrestling, the CWF Legends Fan Fest. That is coming up on November 9th in Lutz, Florida, and tickets are available on Eventbrite.com. The featured guest for this year's Fan Fest is going to be the legendary Barry Windham. Barry he wrestled in Florida, and then he was also in Jim Crockett Promotions at WCW as part of the iconic group, the Four Horsemen, as well as the U.S. Express in the original WWF expansion. Barry will be headlining the Fan Fest, signing autographs and taking photos, and then we'll sit down for an intimate 2-hour dinner Q&A event. And not just Barry Windham will be there. You're also going to get to meet J.J. Dillon, Rocky Johnson, Dutch Mantell, Kendall Windham, Tony Gurria, and Larry Thunderbolt Hamilton. Many legends from the CWF days there, and that's just going to be a great show. It's going to be CWF Legends Fan Fest 6. It is at the Marriott Residence Inn in Lutz, Florida, off the Suncoast Parkway. Tickets are limited to 150 fans, which I love that Barry does that. That way, everybody gets a personalized, good experience. You know, you're not just fighting a crowd all the time. A great personalized experience at the CWF Legends Fan Fest. And again, just search for, and I want to see exactly here, search for CWF Legends Fan Fest 6 at Eventbrite.com for tickets to the CWF Legends Fan Fest 6 and our friend Barry Rose. Please support this, and if you can, if you're able to be there, be there. All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. This is the Dream Roster edition of the show, and we're going to go with Aaron's Dream Roster first. We got to pick 20 singles wrestlers and 5 tag teams from any era of pro wrestling. We're putting them in their prime, and we are building a roster with our inaugural champions. Aaron, which titles are you going to have in your dream promotion?
Well, obviously, I'm going to have a tag team title.
Right.
And then I will have a World Heavyweight Championship and a Television Championship.
Okay.
And, were you going to ask another question?
No.
Okay. And I did cheat a little bit. My ring announcer is Gary Michael Capetta. Okay.
Okay.
And the people calling the action of this talented roster that I have built are Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan.
Hey, that's a good fucking commentary team. And actually, it's funny because I didn't pick the ring announcer, but I did pick a commentary team. So. Okay.
So, I think if you would say, "Oh, my ring announcer's Gary Michael Capetta," somebody would be like, "That's interesting." And calling the action is Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. You can't beat that.
No, sir.
So, I'll ask you this, and I broke it down. I have my 10 faces, my 10 heels, and then my 5 tag teams. Which roster do you want first? Or which section of my roster do you want first?
Well, I think we're going to go with the singles wrestlers first.
Well, which faction? The heels or the faces?
Oh, all right. Well, see, the way I did mine, I did my roster, like if I was drafting my draft picks 1 through 20. So we'll go with your faces first.
All right, and I won't say they're in any particular order, but my faces I'm speaking stupid, my first face is the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Dig it.
If you don't say that Randy Savage would be like one of the first 3 people that you would want on your roster in his prime, then you're a fucking idiot.
Definitely somebody you want on your roster.
I shouldn't say that because I don't know if you said he's on your roster or not.
Oh, he's on my roster.
But if he's not 1, 2, or 3, it's somebody that if you could pull anybody, you don't know what you're talking about. Because that guy can do it. That guy can do anything. Anything.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he could be a face. He could be a heel. He could be. I mean, you talk about commentators. He could, when you get him down, you get him down to the end of his run or whatever. He could step into the booth and then come back to wrestling, just like he did in his prime. Savage, you're right. Savage is one of those guys that could do anything.
And as I've said, as I've gotten older, like when I was a kid, you know this, Ric Flair was my favorite wrestler. But the older I've gotten and the more I've watched things and everything like that, as I've become a grown-up, Randy Savage is my favorite wrestler of all time.
And I think we've both said that. I mean, it's kind of unanimous. So apparently the Maxon family is a Randy Savage family because I've kind of as time has gone on, I've kind of picked Randy as my guy. Like, just there's nothing that I can say negative about the man, as a performer. Just
yeah. So he's my number 1 face, and I'll say we'll do this. The person I say first is the face is Randy Savage, so he's my number 1 face, okay? And all these guys, if I'm booking this show and booking this roster, they could all flip-flop throughout the time. So when we get into heels, the first heel that I say would be my number 1 heel, and then it would be the same thing that through storylines and all that shit, then they'd flip-flop, and same with the tag teams. So now we'll go down my face list. Randy Savage is my guy. He's the face of my company. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we got these 9 guys that are underneath him as faces, and it would be Steve Austin.
Okay.
You got anything to say about him?
A great pick. And I'm going to be honest, and it's going to sound crazy. Steve Austin was not on my roster. And that is not a knock on Steve Austin. But as a babyface, it's hard to argue. You know what I mean? And again, he's just like Savage. Austin is a guy that can be a heel and be a face. Yep. He's a versatile performer. He's a guy like that. What I like to say is he's a multi-tool. You know what I mean? Like you can use Austin in a face role, heel role, tag team role, singles role.
I'd have Steve stunning all these motherfuckers.
Well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying. Like, if you needed to cool him off on the roster for a little bit to make room at the top, you could put him in a tag team. That's what I'm saying. Like Steve was definitely a multi-tool in wrestling, and would be somebody that would be an asset to any wrestling roster.
All right. The next guy on my list is Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes, baby. You need a promo? Put Dusty Rhodes on. They used to have, in the early 2000s and the late 90s, you had your long-ass beginning of the show, 15-minute promo segment. Who are you going to throw in that? Dusty Rhodes. Everybody knows that listens to the show. He's my favorite promo in history. And, I mean, just to capture the imagination of your fans, to capture the imagination of the nation, baby. The American Dream.
Was he on your show?
Yes.
And then the next person is Dustin Rhodes.
Also on my list. On my list because...
Now, do you have him as Gold Dust, or you have him as Dustin Rhodes?
I have him as Dustin Rhodes.
Okay.
And I would definitely use him as a babyface. I think Dustin is
he's gonna have the best match on any show you got.
And again, I have to
I should say best match. Sorry, like if I'm building a roster, he's gonna have the best. Like if you're building a show, and I'm trying to preface this with like we're using guys in their prime as a show that you would put on TV now, because it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but what AEW and WWE do now is what you put on as a wrestling show on TV now. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have a very like a very formulatic. I can't speak the word. I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. Like it's a very basic thing that you do on TV. So in the middle of your show, if your show's 2 hours, at like the 45-minute mark, you're gonna have a match. If it's gonna go 20 minutes, and it might have 2 commercial breaks, you want a guy like Dustin Rhodes in there.
Yes. And what I was gonna say on when I talk about it, which means when we get to mine, we can skip over the conversation point. But with Dusty and Dustin, and this goes for Dustin as Goldust. To me, the Rhodes, both of those guys, you have to use them as baby faces because I personally, and this again, I'm just perceiving what I perceive. That's all I can do. Dusty and Dustin Rhodes, to me, were never unlikable.
Yeah.
Like, I never liked it when WCW, like, and like, late 99, early 2000 or whatever, tried to use Dustin as a heel. For some reason, Rhodes, to me, are just baby faces. I don't know why. Just, they don't, when they're heels, they don't click with me. So I would definitely use them as baby faces on my roster.
And like 1992, 1993, 92 through 94, Dustin Rhodes, he's a 20-minute in the middle of the match guy, or in the middle of the card guy. That's just, no matter who you put him in there with, he's going to rip shit up. You know what I mean?
Yes, and just to mention, because we're talking about that, I have to say, I think Dustin Rhodes is an anomaly in wrestling in that he is one of those guys, to me, that has 2 primes.
Oh, he got better as he got older.
Well, no, he was really, really good, like you were saying, in the, like, say, example, the Steve Austin feud in WCW in the early 90s. And then he got the Goldust character, and that was entertaining. But to be perfectly honest, until maybe like 2013, he was because of his addictions and because of his problems, he was kind of sloppy. And it wasn't what he was. So that's why I'm saying it's a compliment. I think since 2013 to now, he's one of those guys like Shawn Michaels who had he had 2 primes. Like he's an anomaly in wrestling. You know, you can say he was great in the early 90s and he was great in the mid 2000s or the mid 2010s. You know, it's crazy. But and that speaks to what a great performer he is when he's straight.
And he's straight when he's not playing Goldust.
Hey, when he's Goldust, he's what was it?
Androgynous.
That can be anything.
I was making a silly joke. The next guy on my list, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Is, and like I said, I'm speaking as maybe not, you know, I would just put this guy on any roster that I would ever want, okay? And it's John Cena.
Okay, Cena.
If you're building a roster of professional wrestlers, you can have any guy you want at any fucking point of his career, why would you not want John Cena on your roster?
Consistent, reliable, and
marketable.
Yeah, marketable.
He looks
yes.
like a goddamn wrestler.
Yeah.
He's a fucking genetic freak.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena gets injuries that they say, if you get this injury, you're out for 7 months, and John Cena's back in 3 days. He's ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a beast.
And people can say what they want to say about him, but when he's in there with the right guy at the right time, he's fucking phenomenal.
Yes. Cena's one of those guys.
I've seen some bad John Cena matches, but I've seen a lot of fantastic John Cena matches.
People can say what they want, and I was about to say that. People can say what they want about modern wrestling, and when they talk about modern wrestling, they talk about from the end of WCW, WrestleMania 17 or 18, then the decline or what have you. So I'm just going to put that period into perspective. I promise you this, in the modern era of wrestling, one of the best matches you will ever see is John Cena and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 23. You know what I mean? That dude fucking hung with Shawn Michaels. And he hung with Shawn Michaels in an Iron Man match. Or in a 60-minute match, or whatever the fuck it was. I'm just saying.
On Raw?
Yes, in the London Raw, that they had the 60-minute match. But I also agree with you that I think that a lot of the hate Cena gets is unfounded and bullshit. And that's coming from a guy that, and Aaron knows this, when he first came out there, I didn't like John Cena. John Cena converted me into a fan of John Cena. He worked his fucking ass off and made me a fan.
Look at the fucking matches he had with Edge.
Oh yeah.
And Umaga.
Umaga.
The John Cena Umaga last man standing match is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He had good matches with Triple H. He's the fucking man. I mean, not, you know what I mean, not the man,
yeah.
but
I know.
he's in that echelon of, I would put him in the same category that you would put Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Steve Austin, and Shawn Michaels.
Yes, deserves to be the top guy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if my promotion that I'm booking right now needs to have a poster child, or not poster child, but somebody to go out there and go on Regis and Kathy Lee, am I going to send fucking Steve Austin or Macho Man? No, I'll send John Cena.
Right.
Because he's going to fucking play right into that shit, and he's going to do a good goddamn job at it. So anybody that wouldn't say that they want John Cena on their roster is a liar, and they don't know what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
So the next face that I have on my list is Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero is a fantastic pick. And okay,
he's not a heel on my roster.
No, Eddie Guerrero,
because he's cheeky fun.
Well, even when Eddie's a heel, he's not a heel.
Yeah, he's cheeky. He's cheeky fun.
Mm-hmm.
He's a wink and a nod of hey, we got this guy,
And Well, I'll just say this. Eddie Guerrero is on my list, but I actually didn't pick him as a singles. I picked him in a tag team. So we'll save that for later. And we'll talk about him. We'll talk about him as a singles here.
But yeah,
Eddie Guerrero, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, one of the greats of all time. And if you don't have Eddie Guerrero on your roster, if you're picking a dream roster, you're failing right from the get-go as a promoter. Because that guy, again, he's like Randy Savage. I would put Eddie Guerrero there with, like we just talked about Cena being with Hogan, Rock, Flair. I would put Eddie with Randy Savage in that he's that guy on your roster that can do anything. He can be a face. He can be a heel. He can be, you know what I mean? He's a multi-tool in wrestling. And I've said this before on the show, and I'll say it again. When I watch Eddie Guerrero on my screen, I smile.
Yeah.
And that's enough for me.
And he could do whatever you want him to do.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. The next guy on my list is, and I have him on my list because he might not be the greatest talker in the world. He might not be the biggest superstar in the world. And this guy might not, bring you ratings, but he's going to get anybody that I bring up later and before over in the ring, and it's Tito Santana.
Tito Santana.
You gotta have a Tito Santana on your roster.
Yes, you do. I have a Tito on my roster, but it's not Tito. We'll get to that later. But yeah, I mean, and I considered him for that spot, and I put somebody else in it. But I absolutely agree with you. Tito Santana was... why did Vince McMahon pick Tito Santana to be the first guy to have a match at WrestleMania?
To get people up off their ass.
Absolutely. You need, and again, I'm going to say, when we get to my roster, I'll classify this guy. We'll just use it as a terminology. I'm going to classify this guy as a Tito Santana, but you need a Tito Santana type wrestler on your roster. You're going to be bringing in new people. You know what I mean? You're going to be trying to elevate new people. This is the guy that is the gateway. This is the guy that's the key master, to get into that, to bring that person up, and to have matches with them on the loop and show them what to do to be successful.
And he's good enough to be where if, say, you have like I said, like an Eddie Guerrero, where, say you have an Eddie Guerrero and he's your TV champion, and for some reason he gets hurt, for a 4-week span, you could put the TV title on a Tito Santana and people aren't gonna shit on it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he'll get people over for you, or he can be a placeholder.
Right.
And people aren't gonna say, "Oh, that guy couldn't be the TV champion. That guy couldn't beat that guy on TV." It's like, no, he's been good enough, and he's well-rounded enough that he can't.
You know what's funny?
It's just funny.
This guy's not on my list. Like, he's not one of my picks. But we were talking about that, you know who is another guy that could fill that spot? Like, you know who another guy I would call a Tito Santana is? Sean Morley.
Yeah.
Sean Morley was a Tito Santana. Like, he was... I've never seen a Val Venus / Sean Morley match that I was like, oh, God, that was fucking terrible. You know what I mean? Like, he always put on a good match. He always gave 100%. He always made his opponent look good. I didn't put him, like I said, I didn't put him on my list in that spot, but as we were talking about that, his name just popped in my head, so I just wanted to mention that.
All right. So we'll do my 3 next faces, and then I need to take a break.
Very
Is
well.
that cool?
Very well.
Okay. The next person on my list is Ricky Steamboat.
Another fantastic performer. Can't disagree with that one. The only thing I can ever critique about Steamboat is promos. But I mean, fuck that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, get the guy in the ring, and I don't give a shit about his price. Like, yeah. That's his plus. Is I don't care if he cut a good promo, because when he gets in the ring, I'm gonna be convinced.
And that would be the guy that I would put on after or before the match. Like, if I'm booking like a house show, that would be the guy that I would put on before or after, like, Tito Santana goes out there and has a match. You know?
Right.
Like, we're going to go into our main event, so right before the main event, or, like, not right before the main event, but I put Ricky Steamboat out there, and Ricky Steamboat has this fucking phenomenal match, okay? And now Tito's going to go out there, and he's going to have a really good match. And then I'm going to go to my main event. And Ricky Steamboat would be my working top star. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anything else on Ricky Steamboat?
No.
Okay. And then the next guy, and he is the only guy that I picked the era of what I wanted, because he's the only guy that I've talked about so far that's changed dramatically, or had changed dramatically through his career.
Okay.
And it's Scott Steiner. I want 1989, 1993 Scott Steiner on my roster.
You want young Scott Steiner.
I want young, brown mullet Scott Steiner on my roster. He's big. He's a bruiser. He's what chicks would consider good looking. He works slick. He's got a fucking great finisher. He can work with any of the baby faces that I just talked about and get a rub from them, and he'd be fantastic. On the 90s, Scott Steiner would be fantastic on any roster you would put him on.
To anybody listening to this show that has not checked it out enough, or is a younger fan or what have you, I recommend you go check out, like Aaron said, from like 1989 to 1992-ish Scott Steiner, and you will see the definition of the word potential in professional wrestling.
That's what I'm saying, and like I said, you could put him on any spot in that roster, tag him with any of those guys, he'll get a rub. And say you have a Randy Savage or a John Cena as your champ, and they fucking jack their knee up and they're going to be out for a couple months, you can put the belt on that guy, you know, and he'll have 2 or 3 good pay-per-views, and if he loses the belt, it's not the end of him.
Right.
And you can shuffle him back in there. He'd be like how I said with Dustin Rhodes. You need a couple of those guys, you know?
Yes.
Where you can put the belt on them, and if they do good, then that's cool. And until the other guy comes back, until your big face comes back, like a Randy Savage or Steve Austin, you can put that belt on that guy, shine him up nice. He looks good for a couple months. Then a Steve Austin or a Randy Savage comes back. He loses it. and he can get right back into the fucking shuffle, and it's not going to be the end of the world if he doesn't have the belt anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And people will still buy him as being a viable contender. And
no
the
disagreement.
last... Huh?
No disagreement.
Alright. And the last babyface on my list before we take our break is... Drum roll, please. Rey Mysterio.
And he was also on my list. I mean, why wouldn't you want to have Rey Mysterio on your roster? You know what I mean? Like, Rey Mysterio,
Exactly.
Rey Mysterio can play any role. He can play the top guy role in a
There's only one role Rey Mysterio can't play.
heel.
Yes.
Yeah. He can play the top guy role in a lighter weight division. He can play the top guy role in a heavyweight division as an underdog champion. He can play the sympathetic role. He can play the you ripped my mask off aggressive role. Rey Mysterio is, again, like Guerrero or Savage, he's a multi-tool. The only thing he can't do, like you said, the only things he can't do is he can't be a heel and he can't be a bully.
Yeah.
But other than that, Rey Mysterio fits. He fits in every box, and he can be in any part of your show, whether it's the lower card, the mid card, the main event. It doesn't matter. He's one of the best of all time, and he can fill any role you need him to fill.
Yep.
And that was everything I was going to say about him on mine. So I don't know if you have more to add.
No, it was the same stuff. Like, as I'm building my show and as I'm building my roster, if I'm putting matches on TV, and I'll go through the heels here after the break, he'd be the guy that, as I'm putting on this show, whether it's a singles match or, like, say I put a top face with him versus two top heels, he's the guy that's getting the shit kicked out of him.
Right.
As he's trying to, like, you know, get the hot tag, and then he's gonna hit, like, a big, like, springboard leg drop and then pop over and get the hot tag in the bigger baby face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's gonna get the hot tag to John Cena, and John Cena's gonna come in there and clean it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's my sympathetic. You need at least one, and you shouldn't have more than one, in my opinion. You need a sympathetic babyface. Somebody that can get the shit kicked out of him on a nightly basis, but not be perceived as being
as a loser.
As a loser.
Yeah.
And that's what Rey Mysterio is. He is the sympathetic little babyface that can get the shit kicked out of him, but people won't perceive him as a loser.
Because he's that fucking good.
Because he's that goddamn good, and then once his big buddy gets in there, he'll come back later and nail you with a couple drop kicks and a 619 and a West Coast pop, and fuck you, I'm gonna pin you.
Yes. All right. Well, there is your babyface roster. And as Aaron said, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back with his
You want my heels or tag teams next?
heels.
Okay.
Aaron's heels are next on the We Can't Wrestle podcast, Fantasy Roster Edition. All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. We are halfway through Aaron's roster here. He's going to do his heel half of the singles roster here in just a second. But, Aaron, I have to say that while we were taking our break, I read some terrible news.
Well,
John Witherspoon passed away at 77. If you don't know who John Witherspoon is, he was a funny motherfucker. And if you've never seen the movie Friday, you're stupid. Secondly, he played Ice Cube's dad in Friday.
It's terrible, man.
Yeah. He also did the voice of Granddad on the Boondocks. He was in the Wayans Brothers. But a very funny guy. 45 minutes.
Some good shit.
Yes, but R.I.P.
He also has. It's not funny, but he has one of the best. Like, and it's on Friday, but he has one of the best. And
I'm sorry. How'd you get fired on your day off?
No, I'm not saying that. It's not a funny thing that he has. And I'm not a dad, and I never want to be a dad. But you're a dad. Mm-hmm. You know? He has, on Friday, one of the best, like, moments that you could say, like, a dad and a son could have, where he finds Ice Cube's gun, mm-hmm. and he says, you know, you can't get up, like, you can't live to fight another day if you have this gun,
right?
And you get shot by it. But if you have these, and he shows Ice Cube his fists, you know. You can live to fight another day if you just scrap.
Right.
You know? And like, people talk about Friday as a funny movie, and it is a funny movie, but that's kind of a powerful scene in that movie. If you actually sit back and look at all the, like, get past all the humor and the goofy shit that happens in that movie.
It is very poignant.
That's a dad and a son bonding at that moment. Mm-hmm. And that's the scene in that movie where Ice Cube's like, you know what? I'm not going to shoot this guy. I'm going to stand up to this bully and I'm going to beat the shit out of him. Mm-hmm. I don't need to shoot him. I'll just punch him in his fucking mouth and shut this guy up.
Rest in peace, John Witherspoon.
Okay. Sorry if I got, like, too deep or stupid with that, but that was always a cool scene.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
On that note,
let's talk some heels.
My top heel's Ric Flair.
Ric Flair is also on my roster. And how can you not have fucking Ric Flair on your roster? And I would also cast him as a heel, because, again, just like I said with the Rhodes family, although people have a deep respect and endearment for Ric Flair in their heart, if you're going to use Ric Flair and you're going to use him to make money, you've got to use him as a heel.
And he's my top heel in my company. He might not always have the belt, but he's my top heel. Like, you're not going to see him every single week wrestling on my show. And you might not even see him live in studio every week on my show. You're going to see him, but he might be on his yacht. He's going to be telling you why he's the best. But Ric Flair's my top heel. So then all these other guys, they're underneath the Nature Boy. So, do you have anything else on Rick?
No.
All right. The next guy, and like I said, these are how I said the faces were. They're all interchangeable on where they are at different times on my show. The next person on my list is Curt Hennig.
Curt Hennig is Curt Hennig is in my top 5 favorite professional wrestlers of all time, and I mean, and I agree with you. I would use him as a heel. I mean, he was Mr. Perfect.
He's the Eddie Guerrero flip side of my heels. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, he's the Eddie, like, if Eddie Guerrero is my face that can do whatever I need him to do, Curt Hennig's my heel that can do whatever I need him to do.
Have a good match with anybody. If you need him to win, he can get a strong win. If you need him to lose, he can be a strong loser and lose nothing as far as his heat goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that pick.
The next guy is Ravishing Rick Rude.
Do you have... Okay.
Do I have a favorite Rick Rude?
No. Well, I mean, yeah, and I think we agree on Rude because as more of a WWF fan than an NWA/WCW fan, Rude is one of the guys that I agree was better in WCW. So I assume you're picking the WCW heel Rude from the early 90s.
Yeah.
Kind of he's still he's still ravishing Rick Rude, but he's more of a badass.
Crew cut Rick Rude that isn't like chiseled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like where he has absolutely no waist.
He doesn't wax his hair off of his body.
Yeah, I'm talking like Rick Rude where he was like
a bruiser.
Yeah. That's the Rick Rude that I would have on my roster, and that's the Rick Rude that I would have kicking the shit out of, like, the Tito Santana of my roster. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To where eventually he's kicking the shit out of Tito Santana on my roster, and he's like, I'm Ravishing Rick Rude, I'm the toughest motherfucker out here, or whatever. And then eventually the glass will shatter and Steve Austin comes out there, and then we bust into like a Rick Rude Steve Austin feud.
That's funny because when you were building up to that, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, like that's the Rick Rude that I would run on my roster.
And that's one of the biggest, to me, that's one of the biggest regrets in wrestling history is that he died before he got to make that return to the WWF.
Yeah,
because that's who he would have feuded with. And to think of the possibilities of a Stone Cold Ravishing Rick Rude feud is fucking amazing.
It would have been good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for my next guy?
I am.
It's Terry Funk.
Oh. And you got Dusty on your roster. And you gotta have him feud with that egg-sucking dog.
Yeah.
Terry
I'd
Funk,
have that, but...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
It's fine.
You know how
I'm thinking about it in my head. You know what I'm thinking about, honestly? I'm thinking about who was my number one babyface? Randy Savage.
Funkin' Savage, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Funkin' Savage. I'm thinking about a SummerSlam-ish type, maybe not WrestleMania, big time pay-per-view, but I'm thinking of like a middle of the year, let it go like 4 or 5 month feud between in his prime Terry Funk and in his prime Randy Savage. Fuck off. That would be amazing.
And it's funny, and to go back to Savage, we had that conversation a little bit ago, and we've talked about it on like previous episodes about how both of us have, as time has gone on, you going through Flair or who have you, and me going through Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels or who have I, and how we have come to this conclusion as we've grown older and watched the shit over and over and over again, how Randy Savage is our favorite wrestler. And as time has gone on,
I've always been very fun.
Well, I know, and I have too. But as time has gone on, and I've watched it over and over again, and I've watched more wrestling, and I've absorbed modern wrestling, and I've absorbed what I watched as a child, and et cetera, Funk moves up more and more on my promo list too. Like, his promos are so real. You know what I mean? Like, There's no... I don't want to say there's no theatrics. That's not the word I'm looking for. But there's no... I'm trying to make this feel bigger than it is, because it just is with Terry Funk.
And that's what I'm saying. Imagine the 4 month or the 4 or 6 month build you could get to like a middle of the year pay-per-view between Randy Savage and Terry Funk. Even if they didn't touch each other, if all they did was talk.
And I would pick 89 Terry Funk.
Alright. I agree with that. Or if you, maybe 89 Terry Funk, or maybe like, I don't remember the year, so, fucking,
to me,
kill me for that or whatever.
To me,
but even like, Memphis, empty arena Terry Funk, where he's pouring motor oil over himself and all that shit. Like, any era Terry Funk's amazing.
And any airy Terra Funk is amazing too.
Yeah. Not the words. Any era of Terry Funk versus Randy Savage is fucking money.
Yep.
And I think it's a shame that it never happened in reality. So if I'm booking and I can take two people from any time and put them together in a feud, I would do that.
Big business.
The next guy, unless you have anything else about that, is the Honky Tonk Man. He's in my company.
He's a heat seeker.
He's a heat seeker, and he's goofy as fuck. I need a goofy fucker on my roster. I haven't had a goofy fucker yet. I need him. And when I say goofy fucker, I don't mean that in like a negative term.
Oh, I know. You're right though. He's the gimmick that stands out.
Yeah, and he's the guy that, you know, you got the Terry Funks and you got the Rick Rudes and this, that, and the other thing, and you need that guy that's going to be able to go out there and still put out a believable match, but have a silly gimmick. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, every once in a while, Tito Santana needs somebody to beat.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on the Honky Tonk Man?
No, sir.
Alright, the next guy on my list is Barry Windham.
You want a good hand on your roster, and you already have Tito on the face side. Barry fills that side, or fills that role perfectly on the heel side.
And that is why I picked him. He's gonna go out there, and I would make him my secondary champion any day of the week. And if I have a heel champion, and my heel champion would be like a Ric Flair, and he would get hurt, and I need somebody to replace him, it would be somebody like a Barry Windham.
If you talk 1985, and I know he wasn't a heel the whole time, but I'm just saying, for the quality of matches, you talk 1985 to 1988, Barry Windham belongs on any roster.
Yep.
That guy was... I don't like to say this because I don't like to disparage people, because through his whole career, obviously, I've never been a professional wrestler. I'm a fucking 5'6" chubby white guy. I can't call any wrestler a bad wrestler. That's why this show's called the We Can't Wrestle podcast. But so when I say this, I'm not saying it disparagingly. But Barry Windham from 85 to 88, before he got chubby, before he I don't even know what the word is, but he was one of the best wrestlers in the world. He
was one of the best wrestlers in the world when he got chubby.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, do you see what I'm saying though? Like, before he kind of got caught up in family drama and demons and blah blah blah. I mean, Barry Windham was, to be honest with you folks, if you're younger and you haven't seen it, Barry Windham could have very possibly been the next Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? Like, he was that fucking good. He was that good. He could have been Hulk Hogan Japan. Like, he could have been Hulk Hogan with the marketability and fucking wrestle like a motherfucker. Yeah. So anyway, yes, Barry Windham, good pick.
All right, the next guy on my list is Shawn Michaels.
Obviously, also on my list.
What Shawn Michaels is on your list?
1992 to 1995.
That's the Shawn Michaels. Well, it's kind of the Shawn Michaels on my list. The Shawn Michaels on my list was the 92 to 94. The short, chubby.
I'll go more into that when we get to mine.
Okay, that's the Shawn Michaels on my list. Is the short, like, fuzzy chest, chubby one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Cocky as fuck.
Yeah, but that's the Shawn Michaels on my list, and we'll let you talk about him more.
Yeah, I'll go a little more into depth with him on mine.
And that's why I'm leaving it. I'll let you go. The next guy on my list would be Eddie Gilbert.
Kind of. Okay. I have a couple out of the blue, like, pull them in picks too on mine, and that's what I kind of see him on yours. I can see it though.
Well, Eddie Gilbert is on my list, honestly, is the guy that is the semi-wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you would take any of the heels that I put on my list, he would be the guy that would be with them, but not necessarily wrestling every week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so say you take, like, Rick Rude and Barry Windham, and you put them together as a team, okay? Barry's tall, he's a badass, and then you got Rick Rude, and he's chiseled, and this, that, and the other thing, and then you got Eddie Gilbert, and he's in the middle of them, and he's kind of their manager partner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they get into some shit with, like, two other wrestlers for 2 weeks, and it comes down to if Barry Windham and Rick Rude lose to face A and face B, then they get 5 minutes alone
Steamboat
with Eddie
and
Gilbert.
Dustin.
Yeah, like they lose to, like, Steamboat and Dustin beat them, then Dustin gets 5 minutes with Eddie Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
That's Eddie Gilbert to me.
And I have a guy on my roster like that too, and I'll get to him when we get to him.
Okay, and it wouldn't be unbelievable if like Eddie Gilbert's getting ready to go into that, so you see like 2 or 3 matches leading into it where he's beating jobbers on TV because he's still a fucking wrestler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why Eddie Gilbert's on my roster.
Perfect.
And he's a hell of a fucking talker.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. And then the second to last guy on my roster is Roddy Piper.
You talk about a good heel.
Who is my, in personal opinion, he is in my top 3 favorite wrestlers of all time, and that's why he's on my roster.
And Piper serves, and I'm not discrediting in wrestling because that's amazing. He also serves something that an Eddie Gilbert serves too in a different way, because you can have Piper not only be a wrestler, but you can have Piper do that Piper's Pit.
Yep.
To get main event or up and coming baby faces over, or to put over your up and coming or main event heels. Like Piper serves, he serves many masters in a wrestling promotion.
And like I said, we were doing this shit where we were saying, not shit, you know what I mean? Like we were saying, you're going to go back in time, you're going to bring anybody back,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to build a roster of your dream people. Roddy Piper is he's in my 3 favorite wrestlers of all time. My 3 favorite wrestlers of all time. And you can mix and match them however you want to go, is Randy Savage, Ric Flair, and Roddy Piper.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love Roddy Piper.
Oh, you're from Columbus, Ohio.
He's hands down one of my 3 favorite wrestlers of all time. And I'll go on record anytime somebody asks me, who are your favorite wrestlers of all time? It's Ric Flair, Randy Savage, and Roddy Piper. I fucking love Roddy Piper. One of my favorite things I ever saw was when he interviewed himself.
That's fun.
It's like, on the cat's ass. It's great. Two times. Yeah, and like, who else can you say? And you can't even say Steve Austin because that shit, it wasn't scripted, but it was allowed. Okay? Who else can you say legitimately fucked with Vince McMahon on TV?
Austin and Hogan.
It was allowed.
Right.
Like, they knew going out there that Steve Austin was going to stun Vince, or he was going to shoot him with beer, or he was going to do this. And it was cool. But on live television, who else could go out there and just fuck with Vince McMahon?
Ventura.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, you're right. You're right. That's because Ventura and Piper didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, fuck that guy. They had their own money. And then I have one more guy. My last heel is Bret Hart.
Bret Hart is on my list as well, but I'm using Bret as a face. But go ahead.
Heel Bret's better.
He is, but when you hear my roster, you'll understand why I'm using him as a face. But
Okay.
Bret's heel run is, as I have discussed, especially in our Best Heels episode of the show, is possibly the greatest heel run my favorite heel run in wrestling history. Like, I like Bret, and Aaron loves Ric Flair, and I do too. But I like Bret. Like, I rank Bret heel over Flair heel. But that's just me, you know. So I can totally see why you would put him on your heel roster, because Bret was the ultimate... Okay, Bret Hart... Tell me if you disagree with me. Bret Hart had the perfect heel face.
Yeah, he was
like, he
smug.
had the perfect heel, like, aura. You know, like, he was so smug. Like, you just want to smack him across his fucking face.
Yeah.
So good. I absolutely can't disagree, even though, like I said, I'm going to use him as a babyface on my roster to begin with, to start out anyway. I cannot in any way disagree with that.
Alright, and then my 5 tag teams, and we can blow through these if you want to.
Okay.
I know you said you didn't want to record too long tonight. My tag teams are the British Bulldogs.
Okay. And they are on my list.
The Rock and Roll Express.
They are on my list.
Demolition.
They are on my list.
Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard.
All right.
And the Quebecers.
I almost put the Quebecers on my list.
The Quebecers are on my list for the same reason that Honky Tonk Man was on my list.
Get under your skin.
Yeah, they can be goofy, they can be silly, they can get under your skin, but they can also work. So if you have a reason that you have a heel tag team and they get hurt, you can put the belts on them for a couple weeks, get them over, and then allow the face team to beat them.
Right.
And that's why they're on my list.
Okay.
So, do you need my champions?
A good tag team division there. Do you want to discuss any of the other teams, or do we get to them? Because we had a lot of the same tag teams.
Well, we don't need to discuss the teams then. I was just saying, do you want my champs?
I do. Who is your inaugural World Heavyweight Champion in the Aaron's Wrestling Federation?
If I was going to do a tournament, which I would do for my heavyweight championship, at the end of it, it would be Bret Hart.
As a heel.
As a heel. Because he would talk down every single person on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wouldn't be like, oh, I have an allegiance with this person. He would say, oh, you know, fuck you, Dusty Rhodes.
Right.
Fuck you, Ric Flair. Fuck you, whoever.
Because
he would
it doesn't matter, because I'm the best there is, the best there was.
I'm the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Fuck all of you. You know?
And then he's going to have 6 months to a year of great matches.
Yeah, with all those guys. And then my inaugural television champion would be Ricky Steamboat.
A good pick for that title, because that'd be a wrestling title.
Yes. And then my tag team champions would be the British Bulldogs.
And who's chasing them?
Who's chasing them?
Yes. Because I'm assuming you're using the Bulldogs as faces.
Well, you're going to assume wrong.
Uh-oh.
Because what's going to happen is Bret is going to start talking a bunch of shit to somebody, to everybody, and then Steve Austin's going to come out and attack him, and then guess what's going to happen? His brother-in-laws are going to be like, we can't just watch our brother-in-law get beat up. And they're going to come out and they're going to help Bret, and then you turn Bret and the British Bulldogs into a faction, and they have the world title and the tag team titles. And they're a tweener, like, not a heel group, not a face group. They're out for themselves group. and you can have any of those teams chase the British Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I got thoughts.
Okay, so I did not break my roster down by heel face. I'll go through that as we go through it, but it's time to get to the most amazing wrestling roster ever. I was hoping that would trigger you to be like, fuck you, fuck off,
no,
fuck off
you know,
upstairs.
you're right. I'll let you know if you're right, and I'll tell you if that person's a heel or a face, in my opinion.
Okay, so
you can be Triple H, and I'll be Vince McMahon.
Oh, so you're gonna book the bad finishes, or
maybe?
I mean, if we're talking, I guess if we're talking in your prime. So anyway, so now we get to my roster. And as we go through, it'll be a little shorter because we'll knock off the people that Aaron talked about, unless I have something specific to talk about them. But my first draft pick, if I'm picking my first roster, is actually someone you did not have on your roster, which is crazy. And he is actually
Luke.
He is actually going to be my inaugural World Heavyweight Champion as well. And that is Chris Jericho. And I'm going to use him as a heel.
But you should.
And Chris Jericho, to me, is one of those multi-tools. And not only a multi-tool, but a main event multi-tool. Chris Jericho can fulfill any position I want him to on my roster. And as my first champion, he is going to win a tournament. He'll probably win it in shady fashion, but he is going to be my first champion as a heel, Chris Jericho.
Which Chris Jericho almost made my list. Like he was almost on there.
On the list.
And I can't say why he wasn't. He just got eked out. You know what I mean?
Right. And he is, you say eked out. Although he's one of my favorite wrestlers, a guy that you mentioned on your roster, Kurt Hennig, just got eked out on mine. I did not. Chris Jericho was in that position for me. He's my first top heel champion.
He's a multi-tool. You can use him wherever you need to use him.
And he's going to give you a great promo, and he's going to want you, when he wins that inaugural tournament to win the championship, the first thing that you as a fan are going to want to see is for him to lose his title, because you know he's going to be the guy that does business and makes it so you want him to lose the title.
Yeah.
So, unless you have anything else on Mr. Jericho.
I do not.
My second pick kind of sort of fits the position that you put Cena in on your roster. He's my spokesman. He's my face, my public face of the company. He may or may not get a title run against Jericho, but he is The Rock.
I didn't even think about The Rock.
I mean, you talk about to get your brand on the map. You know what I mean? That guy in his prime is a sports entertainer to the next level, and a guy that you can, and I will secede actually to Cena in this respect, but he was the guy that I was going to have as, the Make-A-Wish guy, the Hollywood guy, the guy that took my brand and made it on ESPN, I guess.
Yeah.
My next pick, and I'm using him as a face, and we talked about this a little bit more during Aaron's picks, and he might be the guy that inaugurally feuds with Jericho over my world championship, is Bret Hart. And the reason I said during Aaron's talk about Bret and his roster is Bret was going to be a guy that I was going to use as a face initially and then gradually turn him heel, kind of like the WWE did. Like, that was what made Bret a great heel, was that he was a great face first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I always honestly used him as a face, but like when it was a lot easier for me to pick heels, by the way.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier to pick 10 heels than it was to pick 10 baby faces. But I was going to let Bret... Oh, you know what I mean. Like, what you're saying is you let him stew and maybe not always get the championship shots, and then he's like, fuck this, and he's mad. I didn't think about that. When I was building heels, I thought about, these guys are my favorite heels ever, and Bret was certainly on the list, so that's why I put him on there, not thinking about, like, well, why did he turn heel?
Right, yeah. But yeah, that's where I'm going with Bret. That's why he is third on my list of picks as the singles roster. Number 4 for me is Aaron's number 1. It's the Macho Man Randy Savage. Yeah, And Randy in my promotion would definitely be a kind of a tweener. Like, he'd go wherever I needed him to go at the time. And he never really, honestly, and I know it sounds silly, it sounds like hot-shotting booking, but Randy, to me, would never have a clearly defined status, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you'd always wonder what Randy's going to do.
Yeah. And the reason he was the top face in my company was because we were just looking at this guy in his prime, and I don't think he was ever more in his prime than when he was with Miss Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely not. The WrestleMania 4 to WrestleMania 5 title reign of Randy Savage is most definitely his prime, which of the majority he was a babyface.
And is there any male-woman combo that, unless they were together all of the time, because both of them were over separately.
Yeah.
But is there a female-male, how do you want to say, combo that's any bigger than fucking Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth?
Absolutely not. And it's funny because they weren't bigger, and I'm not going to try to draw a huge equivalency between those. But the only, I'm just using this as an example, the only male-female combination that I would say was more over, was not more over, but as over, equally as over with me. And again, because it was so much shorter, it's not, Randy and Liz are it.
Yeah.
Eddie and Chyna.
Mamacita.
Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it was in a different era where things happened quicker. Like, stories began and end quicker.
That shit where they went to the prom? It's fun.
Fuck, it's great. But yeah, I mean, but you're right about Savage and Liz. But I would use Savage as a tweener, to be honest. Now, my 5th pick was not on your list, and I'm going to use him as a heel. And I think he would fill the I'm not the top heel, but I am the heel that might win the title from time to time because I have a crazy cult, and that's Bray Wyatt. I think that he fills a role that whether it's
Bray
a
Wyatt
whether
now or the Bray Wyatt that debuted?
my favorite Bray Wyatt which is like 2013 to 2015.
Right.
Again, he's not always your champion. He's not always in the top, but because he has that faction around him, and he has a charisma. Because I think he's wildly underused. I think that this Fiend character is one of the best things they ever could have done, but they fucked it up as usual. But anyway, he's a guy that I think that in the modern era has a talent that has been squandered because of the booking. If you would have dropped Bray Wyatt into like 1980s or 1990s wrestling, it would have been a completely different fucking story for that guy.
Yeah.
He has it. You know what I mean? He has it.
LDHLO. How do you say it? When somebody's the son of somebody in Mexico.
Oh, I'm sorry. He is El Hijo de Shyster.
El Hijo del Shyster.
De Shyster.
De Shyster.
Um.
LDHLO.
He fucked that up. You said LD hello. Hello.
Dale.
Hello.
Dale.
But do you have any other thoughts on Mr. Wyatt there?
No. Say his name again.
El Hijo de Shyster.
Del Shyster.
The next guy I'm also using as a heel, because he was an amazing heel, and we're talking about wrestling couples here, so I'd probably have him paired up with his lady. That's Edge.
Yeah?
Edge is a guy that you could use as a mid-level heel in this roster, because, I mean, we're building a dream roster, so, you know, you've got a lot of main event talent. So some of these guys are a main event talent that really aren't going to be allowed to be in the main events all the time.
Yeah.
To me, Edge is that guy. He's like Bray, where he's a guy that you can move into the main events. He's in the main events if somebody's hurt or if you need a rest period on a character or what have you, and then you can bring him back down. And he can be...
I honestly didn't think of Edge. Edge probably would have been somebody that if I would have thought about it longer and harder, Edge is actually somebody that you could put your belt on.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you think of... I've got my faces so far. You know, I've got The Rock, I've got Brett. You know, they could have great feuds with Edge, or even Savage as a face or a tweener.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cheating because I'm adding one. I'm adding a +1 to my roster here, but fuck it, it's my fucking podcast. I would always have him with Lita as a heel because we were talking about couples, you know, and Savage and Liz, Eddie and Chyna, Edge and Lita, you know.
Yeah.
So the next guy on my list, my 7th pick, and I'm using him as a heel as well. A lot of heels in my top 10. But anyway, the next guy I'm picking is going to be my monster. He's going to be my monster, but he's also going to be my monster that goes. And he goes in the fucking ring, and I can plug him in.
Big Van Vader?
No, it's not Vader. It's not Vader.
Oh.
It's Bam Bam Bigelow.
That's his brother.
And
that's funny.
it's Bam Van Bigelow. No, it's Bam Bam because I love Vader. I absolutely love Vader. You know that. But I think as a wrestler, bell to bell, Vader or Bam Bam is a better wrestler than Vader. I actually think and I actually think that Bam Bam. he's one of those guys where, you know how we were talking earlier about how Rude was better in WCW than WWF. I think Bam Bam would have been that guy too. Like, I think Bam Bam could have, because of Vince's mindset about wrestling and where faces and heels were and monsters and blah, 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 I think that Bam Bam could have benefited from being in WCW, especially in the early to mid-90s. Like, I think he would have been a bigger deal than he was. And he was so good. And if you haven't, wrestling fans, if younger wrestling fans that listen to this show, and I know there's some of you, I've talked to you, I've chatted with you, if you haven't watched a Bam Bam Bigelow Bret Hart match, watch it. Watch it, because that's how a small, and Bret wasn't by any means a small man, but a smaller man and a bigger man wrestling match should take place.
I agree.
And that's what I would use Bam Bam as, he's going to be my big guy that goes in there against the smaller guys, has great matches.
He'd be your Bret Hart beanbag chair.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Bam Bam?
Nope.
All right, so Shawn Michaels is my next pick, number 8. And Shawn Michaels is much like Bret in that I am going to use Shawn kind of reverse. You know, with Bret, I'm using him as a face first. And as we go through the promotion, as we go through the years, he's going to mold into a heel. With Shawn, and that's why I said earlier when we were discussing your roster, 92 to 95, is with Shawn, I'm starting him out as you said, the pudgy, furry, cocky heel, and I'm going to evolve Shawn into a babyface.
Yeah.
So, unless there's anything else on that, because we already kind of discussed it. Number 9 on my list, number 9 draft, Aaron, we're not going to have any really thing to discuss because we talked about it during yours, is I'm picking Dusty. And the reason I picked Dusty Rhodes is because he's
fucking awesome.
Yes. He's my favorite promo of all time. And that's all that needs to be said, because people can talk about a match bell to bell all you want, and that's where I have a problem with AEW's show so far. I don't hate on AEW. I don't throw shade on AEW. As a matter of fact, I don't even really talk about them. In that I'm willing to give them a chance. It's been 4 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
I am a bigger fan of the NXT product than the AEW product right now. And but the reason I was saying this is because of Dusty. That's my biggest problem with AEW right now. Is if I'm a wrestling fan that watches all wrestling, so I went into their show knowing the backstory of a Christopher Daniels, or knowing the backstory of an Orange Cassidy, or what the fuck ever, Kenny Omega. But if you watch their show, if you go back and you think of yourself as, I am not a fan that has been watching these people in other promotions, etc., etc. If I watch from show 1 to now, I don't know anything about a lot of these guys. Promos.
Yeah.
Here's Kenny Omega. He's the greatest fucking wrestler in the world. Why? The fuck? Because he hasn't shown me anything on that show that proves he's the greatest wrestler in the world. Because it's I mean, his matches are kind of garbage.
I shut somebody down about AEW. I think I shut them down anyway because they didn't reply back. I put it this way. This guy talks some smack about AEW, and I said, do you like Raw? Okay. And he said, yes, I like Raw, whatever. And I told him, well, go back and watch the first 3 months of Monday Night Raw. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Still there?
Yeah.
And you watch the first 3 months of Monday Night Raw, nobody had a fucking idea what they were doing.
Right. And that's why I said
some of it was really good, but a lot of it was really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You had to sit through the really terrible to get to really good.
Yeah, I mean, you have to find yourself. And that's why, like I said, that's why I'm not...
That's what I told that fat kid.
And
he went about his business.
And that's why I'm not trying to throw a bunch of shade on them at first. You know, like, I'm not talking... If I'm talking on the internet about AEW, I'm really, really trying not to talk about negative or positive. I'm not trying to... Because I want to see how it pans out. Now, come January, I may have more to say. I want to see how it fills out. But right now, I'm a bigger fan of NXT, and I'm a bigger fan of NWA. You know, like, I
get it.
But yes, that and back to, you know, we kind of went off the track here, but that's why I'm saying Dusty. You need somebody that can cut a great promo. And, like we were talking about earlier, you need somebody that can get into another role too eventually. Like, I could put Dusty in my commentary booth, you know.
Yeah.
So Dusty Rhodes is a definite. Now, number 10, numero 10 on my roster. I need a guy that is a great hand, that has great psychology, that plays a role on either the face or the heel side. Because I'm gonna have to make some decisions here with my roster as time flows on. But so my number 10 draft pick is Randy Orton. I know Randy Orton gets a lot of criticism because people like to say that he's boring, and I don't find Randy Orton boring. I find Randy Orton, and Aaron, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. I find Randy Orton to be in the same classification as a Fit Finlay.
Where he's just good.
Yes. Like he may not be in any day, on any day, in any time, the most exciting, captivating performer in your roster. But if you're going to put him in the ring, if you're going to put him out there in front of the people, psychology-wise, knowing what to do in that ring, knowing what to do before the match, after the match, his facials, his everything, like, he's going to be a utility player that you can't live without.
Yeah.
I hate when people fucking hate on Randy Orton. And there's times in his career as I watch it where I'm not Orton's biggest fan, but I would never say that wrestling would be better without Randy Orton.
Yeah, I agree.
An amazing performer. So the next one on my list, unless you have anything else on Mr. Orton.
Nope.
Number 11 on my list is Ric Flair. And I'm using him as a heel. And in my roster, Flair's kind of in and out. Like, I can't live without him. You know what I mean? Like, I can't not have a wrestling roster without... I know he was your number one heel, and I get that. I totally get that. That dude's fucking amazing. He's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But on my roster, I can't live without him, but he's probably not in my mix, my main event top mix all the time. Like, he's the guy I bring back for Mean Gene to say, here in Greensboro, it's Ric Flair. So number 12 on my list, and this guy, and I didn't tell this from the beginning. I actually have 4 champions. Aaron had 3. I have 4. I have a world champion. I have an intercontinental champion. I have a world television champion, and I have tag champions.
Jesus.
So this guy is my first intercontinental champion.
Okay.
And he's Owen Hart.
I'm not going to say anything disparaging about Owen Hart.
And you were talking about stables earlier, like an initial stable.
Yeah.
I would use, and I don't know, again, this is just our first 30 picks, so we might have other guys that come along, you know what I'm saying. But first world champion, first Intercontinental champion, Jericho and Owen would definitely be a pair-up for me as a heel dominant faction. And they would have those two top titles. And I mean, Owen Hart, shit. You want some entertaining wrestling television, you got Owen Hart.
Yeah.
The next guy, unless you have anything else on Owen.
No.
The next guy on my roster, and I'm using him as a face initially, and he may even be a top contender or the top contender for Owen's Intercontinental Championship, is Kurt Angle.
He'd fuck anybody up on anybody's roster.
And you're going to have a great match, and you're going to have a great promo. And Kurt Angle, you know, a lot of wrestling fucking experts, people that have been in the business for 40 years, will tell you that Kurt Angle, of the 90s pro wrestlers, was the guy you want on your roster. And I'm probably not initially going to use Angle as one of my top guys, but I'm definitely going to use Angle as, like I said, a guy to feud with Owen for the Intercontinental title and obviously move up the ranks. So I guess I'll say, even though, okay, let's say this. I'm going to use like a 2001 to 2004 Kurt Angle.
You could use in any era Kurt Angle, and
That's
he's going to
true.
fuck somebody up.
That's true.
Like, Kurt Angle could fuck anybody up right now. And he has goddamn fucking
and make you smile while he's
paperclip
doing
legs. And he could fuck people up.
it. And make you smile while you're doing it because he's also an entertainer.
Yeah. He'd tell you a funny knock-knock joke.
Angle's kind of the first guy that, you know, when you really think about it, he's the first guy that kind of came up at the end of the territory the end of the more than WWE wrestling scene.
Yeah.
But into the only WWE wrestling scene. So he got kind of the lessons of both, I guess.
Yeah.
And just an amazing performer. Love some Kurt Angle. So the next guy for me, he's gonna be a heel. He's gonna be a utility player. He's gonna be a guy that can be in a semi-main or main event feud, but also move down the card, lose to some new guys.
Is it Ronnie Garvin?
No, he wouldn't be on my B team. But this guy is Bad News Brown.
Alright.
All you beer belly sharecroppers.
Yeah, you fat beer belly sharecroppers. And he smacks the shit out of Jack Tunney because Miss Elizabeth was giving Tunney favors.
Giving to the old Bill Clinton. I don't know. Bad news. I gotta have Bad News Brown on my roster. Like I said, he's got to put over the up and coming baby faces, and he's good enough. He's damn good enough to get, you know, like a Randy Savage or a Bret Hart or a Dusty Rhodes to get in a feud with one of those guys, and he's still a player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The guy was fucking great.
Yep.
So the next guy on my list, number 15, and this is my Tito Santana. A different wrestling style, but kind of the guy that we were talking about, the kind of guy you want on your roster like a Tito Santana. A good hand, positive attitude, can work with anybody, have a good match, and my guy's Kane.
Alright. I wouldn't put Kane on my roster, but that's cool.
And I know my Tito's a little bigger and thicker,
Yeah.
and maybe
He's a little bigger.
a little more
He's a little
cumbersome
thicker.
than your Tito.
He's a little more white.
But the gist of it is, he's a great guy, an all-around worker. He's not going to play politics. He's just going to go out there and do what you need him to do and do it well. And that's Glenn Jacobs.
Alright, I'm not going to dispute it.
My next pick, and he's going to be my first World Television Champion, because I need my World Television Champion to be able to go out there and have a great match with anybody. And he's going to be a sympathetic babyface. And Aaron had him on his roster as well, and that is Rey Mysterio. So we won't have a lot more to talk about him because we discussed him earlier. Next on my list...
He's your synthetic babyface.
Yes. Next on my list is going to be a mid-tier. He probably won't ever be in the main events, honestly. But he is going to be my mid-tier shit heel. I want you to guess, Aaron, just one guess. Who's my mid-tier shit heel?
Ted DiBiase.
No. Don Morocco.
I like Don Morocco.
So going down. He's probably going to get a run as my Intercontinental Champion. He's probably never going to be the World Champion. He may even be in that Jericho Owen faction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Mr. Fuji with him.
Fuji Vice. But yeah, Don Morocco, man. Goddamn. What a fucking performer.
Love him. Watch his, pre-WrestleMania heel promos and shit.
Damn. Like when he was feuding with Backlund and Snuka?
Yeah, it's good shit.
It is. He's even... I mean... I prefer Don Morocco as a face. Or as a heel, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, as a face, he sucked.
One of my favorite heel turns, though, in wrestling, is his turn on Wahoo McDaniel in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
God damn, it's good. But anyway, I got Don Morocco. Next on my list is a guy that is probably going to be in a face...
How many more you got on your list?
What's that?
How many more you got on your list?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, and then my tag teams.
Okay.
I hope you're liking my roster so far.
I do.
The next guy on my list is probably going to have some face versus face world television title matches with Rey Mysterio. He's Jushin Liger. Jushin Liger can have those great matches, and he can also take a fall and not get hurt a lot, like character-wise.
Yeah.
The other guy on my... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll take some Jushin Liger.
The next guy on my list is, we talked about him at length during Aaron's discussion, and I even kind of talked about where he would fit on my list, because I prefer him as a face, is Dustin Rhodes. The 20th guy on my singles list, this guy is going to be a utility player, man, and he is going to be, again, we have our initial roster here, so we're going to bring other people in, and et cetera, but he's going to be a guy that my new guys can learn from. My veterans can beat in the ring, but he's not going to lose a lot. He's going to be definitely a mid-tier player, but he's always going to be around because he's fucking important. And I need Jamie Noble on my roster.
All right.
Jamie Noble, baby! Sorry.
I'm going to disagree, but that was a weird one.
No, it's not. You need
that was my Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, all right, and that's what I was going to say, and it's great that you brought that up because I completely fucking forgot. Earlier I said I have an Eddie Gilbert on my roster, too, and it's Jamie Noble. That's my Eddie Gilbert.
Shalom.
What's that?
Said shalom.
Shalom. My tag teams. So my champion is Chris Jericho. My Intercontinental champion is Owen Hart. My TV champion is Rey Mysterio. My tag team champions are going to win a tournament. And they're going to beat my top heel tag team in the tournament final, but probably trade the title back and forth. My babyface tag team, my initial tag team champions are the Rock and Roll Express. And Aaron also had them on his list. You can't have a tag team roster without Ricky and Robert, quite frankly. If you do, you don't like pro wrestling. My top heel tag team is Demolition. Another heel, and they're going to be feuding with the Rock and Roll Express initially for the tag titles. Another heel tag team I'm bringing in, and you had one of them on your actually list, is Doom. I'm using Doom as a tag team initially.
Okay.
Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, and quite frankly, that badass entrance music.
Bam, ba-dam, bam, bam. Bam, ba-dam, bam, bam.
And that gets me Teddy Long as well. Another babyface tag team, and Aaron also had them on his list, the British Bulldogs. I am going to be using them as faces, actually.
I turned them, though.
I know you turned them. But I'm going to use them as faces to feud with Doom, Demolition, maybe have some face versus face matches with the Rock and Rolls. But the British Bulldogs definitely on the list. And my last tag team, and we mentioned them kind of during during Aaron's roster, is I'm initially bringing them in as a tag team, and that's Eddie and Chavo Los Guerreros. And they're going to be tweeners in this tag team division. I love those guys together.
Yeah. The Los Guerreros said to that old lady, you got a leak in your pool. You wouldn't want it to get filled up with water now, would you?
That's all you need to know about Los Guerreros. So Aaron,
that's my favorite thing they did. Oh, you wouldn't want your pool to get filled up with water now, would you? And she was like, oh, no.
And eventually, Dream World Fantasy Booking, I'm breaking Eddie and Chavo up, and they're going to go into that singles roster, and, you know, Chavo's going to be a heel, and he's going to feud with Brett, and et cetera, but whatever. This was our initial picks, and I think that both of our rosters were pretty fantastic and would have made for some great wrestling promotions.
Yep.
They both get 5 Jeff Farmer yeps.
Yep.
And Aaron, do you have anything else to say for this week's show? We're going to wrap it up.
Nope.
You answered both questions. Terrible or great, however you look at them, professional wrestling rosters, and quite frankly,
I don't like it. Suck my ass.
I'd like your feedback. Aaron says suck his ass. but I'd like your feedback on what you think about this week's show. Check us out on our Facebook group, of course, the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Facebook group. You can join anytime. Just request to join, and I will.
On Instagram.
I will approve you unless you're a racist. Unless you're a racist fuck, I will approve you to join our group.
Whoa, who is racist? Did somebody go racist?
Well, I vet people that request to join the group.
I know, but did somebody that tried to, join the group, was he, a racist?
Yes.
Who?
I don't know his name. I didn't accept him.
Call his shit out.
Billy Bob Cornhole. I don't know his fucking name. I just don't like racist.
Whoever the fuck is being racist, stop it.
I don't want racist fucks in my Facebook group and on our podcast.
Jesus Christ. Who's being racist?
If you're racist, if you're
racist,
racist, go fuck yourself. If not, you can join our Facebook group.
Jesus. Fuck yourself with a goddamn potato or something. Don't be racist. Dear Lord. This shit went south quick. You were just like, hey, be our friend unless you're a fucking racist. And I was like,
goddamn
oh.
right.
I know, but it went
Ain't nobody
south
got
quick.
time for that shit.
I know, but I didn't think, like, there was even anybody that was, like, remotely racist that would be on any kind of, like...
Oh, man, racists have Facebook, brother. And they listen to podcasts.
If you're racist and you're listening to this, fuck off.
Don't listen.
Yeah, if you're a racist
we don't want
person,
you here.
If you're racist, drown yourself in the river. Mammy.
This is great because it's a great end to the show, like it drug on. I like endings that drag on.
I don't like racists.
Me neither. That's why I told them if they're listening to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, I can think of like 847 things I don't like about somebody before I think about like the color of their skin.
Yeah, it's the least of my worries.
or like I can think of like 647 things before I think about the religion that they fucking serve. Jesus Christ, man.
But yes, I will say, just for posterity, one more time, there was someone that tried to join our group, and when I vetted them, seemed kind of racist. Maybe
was it David Duke?
No, it wasn't David Duke. I'm going to start playing Tootsie now, I think.
Wait a minute, I tell you.
Yep,
you
I'm playing Tootsie.
You want to hear Tootsie? All right.
You want to hear Tootsie?
Chorus, you understand? In the third chorus, I whistle. Now give it to him hard and heavy. Go right ahead.
Aaron, say goodbye to our non-racist
Goodbye.
audience.
Tootsie, don't cry.
Have a pleasant day.
The little choo-choo train.
And if you are a sneaky racist that got in here, go fuck yourself.
You don't know just
Yeah.
what makes me
Speed racist.
and then
Speed racist. Go speed racist. Speed racist. Go.
Oh, God.
Don't cry, Tootsie, don't cry.
Huh?
I said that was funny, oh God.
Tootsie, goodbye.
We're signing off. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. I'm Nate signing off for Aaron. Aaron, don't say anything because we're signing off.
Alright.
We'll see you next week on the We Can't Wrestle podcast, Podbean, Stitcher, any podcast app you listen to, Spotify. It doesn't matter.
Goodbye, Tootsie, goodbye.
Goodbye, Tootsie. Ha!
Goodbye, Tootsie, don't cry.
That's hot.
The little choo-choo train.
That's hot.
That makes me
Get hot.
away from you. You don't know just how sad it makes me. Kiss me to the end, then hey.
Hey.
Get over,
Hey.
yeah. Watch for the mail. I'll never fail. You don't get a letter, then you know I'm in jail.
If you don't get a letter.
Don't cry, Tootsie, don't cry.
Hmm?
If you don't get a letter,
Goodbye, Tootsie,
I'm in jail.